Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Creating pressure several times stronger than before that made the surrounding people's skin ache. If that much affected the bystanders, then facing it head-on, Goliath must have felt even more. As Kai brandished both swords, Goliath halted its charge, growling low like a beast defending its territory. Its blood-red pupil shrank to fist size as it stared warily at the green and black swords in Kai's hands. Kai. Kun? Hestia stared blankly at Chi, now standing in front of everyone to face Goliath alone. She suddenly realized she might not know this child of hers as well as she thought. Hestia. Hermes, who had somehow appeared beside her, also stared intently at Kai's back. His usually closed eyes opened slightly, light glinting within them. Your kid is not simple at all. Kai was unaware of what the others were thinking. All he felt was the firm grip on his swords. Looking at Goliath's massive form, his fear had vanished. The dual-wielding, bonus more damage dealt and less received as injuries stack was fully active. Goliath's previous strike had hit him squarely, causing internal bleeding. He wasn't sure exactly how strong the boost from that damage was, but he had a powerful feeling he could kill Goliath now. The standoff didn't last long. Even though the beast sensed something was off, Goliath was still a monster. Within moments, it couldn't restrain itself and charged again, roaring. Kai clenched his lips, focused completely on its movements. He shifted his stance, muscles tensing. Seconds later, Goliath entered the range of his cross-sword attack. Zing! With a screeching clang, the black sword rang out. Kai ducked beneath Goliath's swinging arm, his sword slashing upward at its elbow. Snap! He felt the blade cut through something elastic, but he didn't stop. Oh! Kai kicked off the ground. His black cloak blurred. As he passed by Goliath, he poured everything into his sword, swinging, slashing, striking again and again. Though he'd never used a left-hand sword before, the system's dual-wielding skill activated, allowing him to handle the borrowed slender blade with expertise. Left hand blocked Goliath's counterattack, right hand followed up, leaving a deep gash. With dual-wielding active, the real damage was far worse than it looked. In a flash faster than thought, Kai let his instincts drive his blade. Black and green sword lights flickered in the stone hall, sharp slashes tearing at the nerves of all who watched. Faster. Faster. Even faster. More. 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 More until he touched the peak. His body blurred, lightning fast, as he danced around Goliath. His whole body burned, it felt like wings sprouted from his back. His swords felt weightless, each swing pure ecstasy. Wham! The air trembled with each swing. Goliath couldn't understand what was happening. How did this black swordsman suddenly become so terrifying? Why did even shallow wounds feel like his soul was being ripped apart? It couldn't grasp it. Just pain. Terrible, inexplicable pain. The beast reached out to grab the shadow that had hurt it, but Kai roared, swinging both swords in blinding succession. With a leap, he launched himself into the air, spinning like a hawk, dragging twin sword trails, one black, one green, as he soared past Goliath's head and landed behind it. When he landed, the green slender sword was gone. Huff. Huff. His chest heaved. Kai looked back at Goliath, still standing. But in its back, only the sword hilt remained visible. Then boom. Goliath's massive body exploded into white dust, centered around the slender green sword. A deep purple magic stone, cracked and glowing, dropped to the floor, pierced through by the blade's tip. It's dead? Kai turned and saw the stunned crowd, then took a deep breath to calm his racing heart. He walked over to the stone. Clang. He grabbed the sword and gently pulled it free. Still sharp, forged of pale green unknown metal. Good sword. Kai studied it, then glanced at the quiet female adventurer watching from afar. He couldn't help but reevaluate her. But that wasn't the priority now. System. Beep. Name, Takashi Nake. Race, human. Profession, adventurer level 2. 1469 ten thousandths, Hestia familia, age, 23, 150, height, 178 cm, weight, 74 kg, spirit, 19, 100, strength, 14, 100, agility, 17, 100, endurance, 17, 100, constitution, 15, 100, class inheritance, black swordsman, energy, 392,140.5. Seeing his greatly improved stats, Kai relaxed a bit. Grinding monsters all night had finally paid off. This mid-floor dive was worth it. He opened his black swordsman skill tree. One-handed sword level 3, 22,458 500,000, greatly improves sword technique mastery. Boosts all stats and battle instinct while holding a sword. Increases dodge rate against sword techniques and crit rate while attacking. Insight level 3, 325 500,000, greatly increases observational and intuitive skills while holding a sword. Boosts sixth sense and ambush avoidance. Balance level 3, 14,586 500,000, greatly improves sense of balance, 3D mobility, and agility while wielding a sword. Godspeed reflexes level 3, 49 500,000, boosts agility and dodge against sword techniques. Significantly increases neural response and battle instinct while wielding a sword. All 4 passive skills had reached level 3. The next layer had 2 glowing gold skill slots. Solo player level 1, 10,000 ten thousandths, when acting alone, greatly boosts all attributes over time, up to 500%. Dual wielding level 1, 10,000 ten thousandths, when dual wielding, boosts all stats and grants attack bonuses. Damage reduction and amplification scale with injuries, maxing at 20%/200%, after weeks of training and the Goliath kill, both had maxed out. Without hesitation, Kai tapped both to upgrade. Golden light flashed as the icons stopped flickering and became steady once again. Solo player level 2, 100,000, max attribute boost increased to 600%, dual wielding level 2, 100,000, boosts raised. Damage mitigation max reduced to 15%, amplification max raised to 300%, satisfied, Kai turned to the third layer of the tree. Only one skill existed there, Strategy Fiend. With both second-tier skills at level 2, its pristine white frame now shimmered with golden light. Kai steadied his breath and tapped it. Immediately, a flurry of system messages filled his mind. Ding, congratulations to the host. The skill Strategy Fiend has been successfully unlocked. Current level, level 1, congratulations to the host. All talents and passive skills of the Black Swordsman including basic passives, advanced passives, and core passives have been fully activated. Ultimate passive unlocked, ultimate passive? Hearing a system prompt entirely different from previous skill unlocks, Kai frowned and looked up at the skill tree interface. The 4-tiered skill tree was now fully lit up. Aside from the bottom 2 rows of glowing skills, the first and second tiers had also been activated. Strategy Fiend level 1, 20,000, after entering battle, you may activate Bloodlust mode. By using Sword Intent to devour your own HP, you unleash Sword Aura. The power of the Sword Aura increases in proportion to the amount of life consumed. This was a 3rd-tier skill, currently glowing with a brilliant golden light. But Kai's attention was entirely focused on one skill in the 4th tier. Light of Resolve, condense radiance from your soul to unleash a blow that transcends all limits. The description was short, so short it didn't even specify the actual effects, yet Kai couldn't tear his gaze away from the skill. The skill box was transparent, unlike the silver glow of talent passives or the golden hue of other passives. Light of Resolve had no visible color, yet it was so dazzling that one couldn't look directly at it. So the day has finally come. Looking at the now fully lit skill tree, Kai fought back the excitement surging in his chest, took a deep breath with his eyes closed, and then closed the system interface. Holding his sword, he turned toward the others. Clack, clack, his footsteps landed with crisp, steady echoes. Clack, clack, wearing a faint smile, Kai was in a great mood. All his skills were now successfully unlocked. Not far away, Hestia, Belle, and Lily breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Kai return safely. After all, they had seen him get swatted away by Goliath and vomit blood multiple times. The fact that he came back unscathed was a great relief. Ah! That was seriously walking a tightrope. Once we get back to our area, I need a good rest. But should I take a hot spring bath first, or go for a big feast? Come to think of it, I never did ask Miss Sear for that lunchbox she offered. I also have to thank the owner of this rapier properly. I wonder what she looks like under that cloak. I bet she's beautiful. As Kai relaxed and let his thoughts wander, crack. A familiar shattering sound echoed from behind him. What was that? He paused, his smile frozen. Ah. I remember now, that's the sound of the wall of lamentation breaking. In his field of vision, Hestia, Belle, and Lily's expressions turned to pure terror. Their eyes widened as they stared behind him. Other people nearby also looked shocked. Wait. Didn't I kill Goliath already? Why those faces? His thoughts stopped. A chilling realization dawned. He spun around, drawing his sword and holding it horizontally in front of him. In the next instant, an overwhelming force slammed into his blade like a tidal wave. Crack! The solid black blade shattered instantly into several broken pieces. Then, a half-man tall, deep crimson-scaled fist landed squarely on Kai's chest. Crack, crack. In that moment, an indescribable power shook his soul. His thoughts scattered. Bones cracked inside his body. A moment later, blood gushed violently from every pore. An explosive shockwave burst from the point of impact, launching Kai's body far into the air like a ragdoll. Still airborne, Kai barely regained consciousness. And then he saw the monster that had attacked him. Goliath. But different from the one he had killed before. Over 10 meters tall, its joints covered in red-hot scales, skin steaming, muscles like chiseled stone. Previously, the first Goliath emerged from the left side of the wall of lamentation, and the right side had remained intact, something that should have been an obvious warning. In the original story, only one Goliath ever appeared on the 17th floor. He had trusted the original too much, and now, he was paying the price. His black longsword was shattered, bones fractured in multiple places, and he was likely suffering from severe internal bleeding. This wasn't a game or a sandbox world. It was real. That truth hit Kai hard as he crashed into the ground. Ugh! Barely able to grip the rapier, Kai coughed blood, looking utterly wretched. From victorious hero to a bloodied wreck in mere moments. The dungeon had played a small trick, and Kai had paid dearly for his arrogance. Nearby, Hestia's pained face came into view. She wanted to help but was stopped by a narrow-eyed man in a hat. That must be Hermes. Struggling, Kai used the sword to push himself up. Across from him, the mutated Goliath, a reinforced version of the labyrinth's Lone King, looked at him with a mocking expression. As if laughing at his foolishness. "Oh, man." The Goliath's massive lips moved. Its voice was rough, but its pronunciation was oddly clear. It looked down on the battered Kai with disdain. Thief. Done speaking, the monstrous Goliath seemed to tire of words. It stepped forward, charging at him. Chapter 24, Sword, Drink My Blood. A shadow loomed like a mountain as the massive beast sprinted, scorching heat rushing forward. This was several times faster than the previous Goliath, even faster than Kai's boosted agility stat. He barely had time to brace with his rapier before an unstoppable force sent him flying again. Spinning midair to reduce impact, Kai still spat blood as he landed. His broken bones screamed in agony, and his ruptured organs burned from the strain. Kai-kun. Senpai. Kai-sama. Someone please help him. Is this a joke? That thing. It's a Goliath variant? Their voices sounded distant to Kai, muffled as if underwater. So heavy. His sword, his steps, his body, his breathing, his mind, everything felt unbearably heavy. Multiple afterimages blurred his vision. A sharp ringing overtook his thoughts. The taste of blood filled his mouth and nose. The Goliath's roar erupted before him. Kai looked up, seeing a crimson hand fill his view. Instinct alone moved him. He raised his sword and took the blow head-on. Bang! The impact sent him flying again. A crimson blur followed and backhanded him in midair, slamming him back the way he came. Like a child playing with a ball, the Goliath didn't finish him off right away. It held back, letting Kai suffer longer. So pitiful. Watching this one-sided torment, all the adventurers frowned. Many clenched their fists. But none dared to help. This Goliath, so different in shape, size, and power, struck fear into their hearts. Belle and Lily wanted to intervene, even just to distract it. But Hestia held them back. Kai-kun. Her eyes, deep blue and glowing, stared unblinking at him. Gentle currents circled her body. Hermes noticed the change. His normally carefree face turned serious. Hestia. I know. She looked back at him, then toward the battle again. If something happens to Kai-kun, then I entrust the rest of my children to you, my friend. Hermes instantly understood. Hestia goddess was about to unleash her arcanum for a mortal's sake, even if it meant exile to the heavens. Takashi Nekai. Who are you? That blade sharp or that even stings divine souls? And Hestia's obsession with you? This is really something. Hermes looked at the trembling Hestia, then turned to the blue-haired girl behind him. Asfi-chan. You think you can handle it? Asfi's face tensed as she stared at the Goliath. But she nodded. Barely. Oh? For you to say barely. That's not good news. Ignoring Hermes' teasing, Asfi pushed up her glasses, then pulled a silver glowing dagger from her coat. Is he really worth all this? Poised to charge, she looked back and asked one last question. If you're thinking of value, Asfi-chan, you're way off. That guy is the symbol of the Hestia Familia. His story's only just beginning. I understand. Nodding, Asfi gripped the dagger and dashed forward like a gale. Burning. Agony. Kai endured wave after wave of attacks. Each time, blood sprayed from his body. Am I going to die? The injuries were too grave. His soul seemed to float outside his body, watching this hopeless battle from a detached perspective. Whoosh! A violent gust of wind blew through, lifting the blood-soaked black robe. A moment later, a massive, heavy palm crashed down upon Kai's body. Once again, he was swatted away by the Goliath's brutal strike. The intense pain from his shattered internal organs made him feel like he was suffocating. When he opened his mouth to groan, a gush of blood-tinged foam surged up from his windpipe and choked him back. Counterattack. That was the thought that surfaced in his mind. His hand instinctively tightened around the sword's hilt, his body remembering the unique techniques he had forged through countless battles. But before he could act, the enhanced Goliath's next strike landed, crushing both his gathered strength and the very notion of resistance. It gave him no opportunity to fight back. Cruel, merciless, just like when he had once slaughtered monsters of the upper floors. Although the enhanced Goliath was clearly toying with him, it remained cautious, not allowing him even a moment to breathe or retaliate. Seriously. With this kind of intelligence, is this really a monster from the dungeon? In the haze of consciousness on the brink of collapse, Kai seemed to see a vision of himself dying at the hands of this enhanced Goliath. And in the very next instant, get away, monster. A cold and crisp female voice rang out beside him. At the same time, he felt a warm embrace catch him, keeping him from collapsing to the ground. Rest for now. Leave the rest to me. A tall girl with short wavy blue hair gently laid his broken body down, then stepped forward, shielding him as she faced the enhanced Goliath alone. Kai immediately recognized her. Asphial Andromeda, princess of an island kingdom, known as the Omnipotent One, Perseus, an adventurer of the Hermes Familia. Publicly claimed to be only level 2, but in reality, she was a rare level 4 upper-tier adventurer. Level 4. That alone placed her among the top tier of Olario. However, Noak. He tried to shout out to stop Asfi, but as soon as he opened his mouth, a flood of blood and bits of torn organs gushed from his throat. Asfi was indeed powerful, but she stood no chance against this Goliath. In the original story, even the normal Goliath from the dungeon had given her trouble. Let alone this enhanced version. Kai didn't know the exact power difference between the two Goliaths, but he could feel it. With stats nearly equivalent to a level 3 adventurer, he was utterly helpless before this monster. Like a child facing a grown adult helplessly toyed with. This wasn't the power a typical level 4 Goliath should possess. It was more like level 5, maybe even close to level 6. Asfi may have been level 4, but her combat style leaned more towards support. Facing a strength and constitution type monster like Goliath in a one-on-one head-on fight was already a huge disadvantage. Against one this powerful, it was a death sentence. No way. She can't win. She'll definitely die. Just as Kai feared, Asfi was quickly overwhelmed after just a few exchanges. What should he do? Run? Watching the battle unfold, Chen Mo's throat moved as the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth and his vision wavered. The best move now would be to run. While Asfi held off the Goliath, he could flee to the floor's vertical shaft and make his way to the 18th floor, find the Sword Princess from the Loki Familia and bring her back for help. If it's her, not even this monster could survive. Move. Hurry. Run. It's not cowardice. It's the smartest move. Go to the 18th floor. Find the Sword Princess. But what kind of coward would do that? His whole body was trembling and groaning in pain. Every cell screamed at him to flee this hellish battlefield. But Kai couldn't forget. Just a short while ago, this same blue-haired girl had stepped forward while others stood by coldly, and saved him from that one-sided slaughter. Why would Asfi risk her life to save a stranger like him? Was there some hidden reason? Was she ordered to? He didn't know. He didn't care. All he knew was she saved him. So how could he possibly turn and run now? Find your courage. Don't be a coward. His soul screamed louder than his pain, and at last, his body moved again. He swallowed down the blood welling up from his chest as he forced himself to stand. His fingers clenched tightly around his sword hilt, and he took a step forward. Broken bones were pulled taut by straining muscles just to keep him upright. The pain was unbearable, yet the numbness dulled it. Can't believe I'm doing something this stupid. Pushed past the threshold of agony, he became numb to it. And so, Kai started to run. Blood marked his path as he sprinted toward the battlefield. His black sword was lost. He couldn't use dual blades. The bonus from his solo player attribute was gone due to Asfi's assistance. His current stats barely reached a low tier level 2. Even so, he still had one trump card. The Strategy Fiend. As he ran, he activated the Bloodthirst mode of the Strategy Fiend skill. He still didn't know how to use the 4th layer, Light of Resolve, but the Strategy Fiend had clearly described its effect in the system menu. Devour life force with sword intent, and unleash sword aura. If possible, Kai wouldn't have chosen to use something so obviously dangerous. But now, it was his only hope. His only salvation. The skill activated, and a sharp, fierce sword intent surged from his body. Normally, this intent would radiate outward to suppress others, but this time, it turned inward, toward Kai himself. The moment it entered his body, Kai's face went deathly pale even though he hadn't screamed during all his earlier pain. The sword intent slithered through his bones, muscles, and blood vessels like a blade of ice. It wasn't conventional pain. It was a trembling, soul-deep terror. He could feel his life slipping away. In exchange, a faint red glow began to emerge from his body. Though faint, it carried a powerful, undeniable presence. Sword aura. Kai tried to control the aura and easily enveloped his rapier's blade with it. As if it were an extension of his own body. But to wield power in exchange for life, what a cruel skill. He gave a silent sigh, then dashed directly into the battle. Asfi deflected another strike from the Goliath, forced back several steps, her breathing ragged. She cursed under her breath. From the start, she knew this Goliath wasn't ordinary. Its massive size and deep crimson exoskeletal armor clearly screamed power. But she hadn't expected it to be this powerful. Its strength was many times her own, no, dozens of times. She couldn't match it head-on. Even with all her might, she couldn't leave a scratch on that armor. It's over. Everyone here is going to die. There's no way to win. But maybe. If she could hold on longer. Maybe if you could escape. Lord Hermes went too far this time. There'll be no one to clean up his mess anymore. Would he even feel regret? As she thought that, a black figure streaked past her, glowing with a blood-red light, and rushed straight at the Goliath. Run. A loud voice snapped her out of her daze. Her pale blue eyes locked onto the black-clad figure. The voice still echoed in her ears. Head to the 18th floor. The Loki Familia is stationed there. Find the Sword Princess. Shouting at her to find help, Kai charged toward the Goliath, crimson sword aura blazing around him. He poured everything he had into his grip. Slash. Chapter 25, The Light That Pierces the Darkness. Buzz. The faintly glowing red blade struck, colliding with the Goliath's scaled arm. Sparks flew like metal against metal. It worked. The armor had been breached. A fierce sword mark was carved into the crimson scales. But the intense recoil that shot back through his sword made Kai's face go even paler. His stats were too low. Forget withstanding a counterattack, just holding on to the sword was already nearly impossible. Behind him, Asfi stood frozen in shock. Hey! You idiot! What are you still doing here? Run! Catching sight of her dazed expression, Kai growled angrily, dodging the Goliath's attack while shouting, Go to the 18th floor. Find the Sword Princess from Loki Familia. Only she can save us. Only when he yelled a second time did Asfi snap out of it. Looking at the blood-covered Kai barely dodging attacks, she opened her mouth, as if to say something, but in the end, she said nothing. She only gave him a long look, then turned and ran toward the passage leading to the 18th floor. Sensing her escape, the Goliath turned its head and opened its mouth toward her path. A distorted red wave began forming in its jaws. Seeing this, Kai's expression changed drastically. Watch out! It's roar. As he shouted, he raised his rapier and slashed down at the Goliath's head. Crimson sword aura burst forth, shooting several feet beyond the blade. Zzzzzzzzz. The sword aura tore through the air, making a sharp screech like glass being scraped. The Goliath seemed to recognize the danger, turned back and released the energy from its mouth. A wave of invisible, violent air pressure mixed with sound waves strong enough to shatter stone surged forward, but the red sword aura split it in two. Not far away, Asfi turned to look and her face turned pale. If not for K, she would have been hit directly. Shaking her head to dispel the thought, she glanced gratefully at the black-clad Kai, then turned and disappeared into the shaft. Seeing her escape, the Goliath turned back toward Kai. Its crimson eyes were filled with unmistakable hatred. Locked in its gaze, Kai felt a wave of killing intent crash down on him. His spine turned cold. His sword hand trembled uncontrollably. Ho! He exhaled through clenched teeth, as if cutting off his fear. He slashed his sword across the ground. Red sword aura surged out, carving a line in the floor. Like a cornered animal bluffing before a predator. A threat display. The Goliath bared its teeth. The next moment, it stomped the ground. Though its body seemed massive and clumsy, it moved with the swiftness of a hunting eagle. As it lunged forward, its massive hands swirled with violent wind, unleashing a powerful strike. Only when Goliath's broad, dark red palm rapidly expanded in his view just meters away did Kai react. The blue sword blade suddenly lifted, and pale red sword aura erupted. As Kai swung the sword, a burst of sparks and deep sword marks appeared on the scales covering Goliath's palm. It worked. Seeing the effectiveness of his strike, Kai couldn't help but show a surprised expression. Though his attributes were now at their weakest and the dual-wielding special effect had been forcefully disabled due to missing a second sword, as long as he could release sword aura, he still had a chance of victory. Even this enhanced Goliath, whose newly grown scales couldn't be pierced by even level 4 Asphi, couldn't stop his slashes, or more precisely, the sword aura he unleashed. That seemingly unstoppable sword aura had become Kai's greatest trump card. An extremely powerful offense became a form of extreme defense. As long as Goliath couldn't stop the sword in his hand, Kai could continue this fight. If he could hold off the enhanced Goliath long enough, once Asphi brought the sword princes from the 18th floor, everything would be over. Perhaps sensing Kai's thoughts, Goliath's attacks grew frantic. Several times, Kai almost sliced its arm off. The tide of battle seemed to shift in Kai's favor. Hestia and the others couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. They didn't know why the once mighty Goliath had suddenly been overwhelmed by Kai, but at least it was clear Kai was now in control of the fight. But in truth, Kai was silently suffering. It looked like he held a major advantage. Thanks to the sword aura shielding him, Goliath dared not land a single blow, while Kai's attacks could inflict considerable damage. But everything hinged on the sword aura. And to release it, Kai was constantly enduring the pain of sword intent invading his body. It was like boiling a frog slowly. The effects weren't immediately visible, but with time, the massive drain on his life force would drag him into ruin even if he had the upper hand. No, this can't go on. I need to end it quickly. If it came down to a battle of endurance, Kai, as a human, could never outlast Goliath. Making up his mind, he quickly stepped back twice and shifted the stance of his sword. He raised the rapier to his ear, bent his arm, and took a fencing stance. Come. Whispering in his heart, Kai completely relinquished control over his body. In that instant, it descended. Strategy Fiend. When Bloodlust is activated, Sword Intent consumes life force to release Sword Aura. The more life force consumed, the stronger the aura. If the system's default drain rate already allowed Kai to release Sword Aura capable of piercing enhanced Goliath's scales, what would happen if he intentionally increased the drain? Kai soon had his answer. It was power like that of gods and demons. The forbidden power of the Fiend. Visible deep red whirlwinds spun rapidly around Kai. Though merely air currents, they sliced the surrounding air with screeches, as if they were tangible blades. Standing at the center of the vortex, Kai slowly opened his eyes. A scarlet line flickered within his pupils. The moment it appeared, the atmosphere in the entire stone hall on the 17th floor turned heavy. So this is what Strategy Fiend truly means. Lifting his left hand, Kai muttered thoughtfully. He extended a slender finger and pointed directly at the enhanced Goliath. The moment he pointed, Goliath's crimson eyes shrank. With a roar, it began to run wildly through the hall like a beast. Kai silently kept his finger locked on Goliath, as if targeting prey. Ow! Ayo! Oh. Goliath's chaotic roars echoed as it accelerated. Like a mad fugitive, it charged straight toward Hestia and the others. Lady Hestia. Please step back. Belle and Lily shielded Hestia and drew their weapons. Kai's fierce and unrelenting battle had deeply moved them. In the past, monsters like Goliath would have left them trembling in fear. Now, although they were still terrified, they could at least stand their ground. Other adventurers followed suit. Uka, Chigusa, and Mikoto of the Takamikazuchi familia protected their god. Hermes was guarded by a group of solo adventurers. At the rear, a female adventurer in a hooded robe stood silently. At some point, she had drawn a simple wooden sword with a floral hilt, pointed directly at the charging Goliath. As she gripped the blade, a formless current swirled around her, giving her movements an ethereal lightness. Seeing everyone quickly brace for impact, Goliath opened its mouth wide, charging a twisted sonic blast. They had already witnessed that roar's destructive power. The weaker adventurers' legs trembled. But the next moment, Goliath suddenly shut its mouth, stomped hard, and veered off course. Zzz at the same time, several streaks of deep red sword aura slashed across its original path. The aura carved deep fissures into the ground. If Goliath hadn't dodged, it would have been cleaved into pieces. After dodging, Goliath turned its gaze toward the source. Meeting its eyes, Kai gave a helpless smile. The swirling aura around him had dissipated his life force, nearly drained. Those sword strikes had consumed 99% of his life force. Out of biological instinct, his body deactivated the bloodlust state. What a shame. Seeing Goliath had dodged, Kai's face turned pale, his smile bitter. His body wobbled, then collapsed. Even though he had endured countless attacks from the enhanced Goliath earlier without buckling, now he fell. Clang. His rapier dropped with a crisp ring. Kai-sama. Senpai. Aow. The cries of Hestia, Lily, Belle, and Goliath's roar filled the air. Though his eyes remained open, Kai could see only darkness. Completely drained, gravely wounded, with no cards left to play. Seriously, why is it that in all those Isekai novels, the protagonist gets an easy ride, endless power-ups, miracles, and harems, while he had to grind day after day, struggling to complete some unclear trial? If there truly was a god, that god was far too cruel. So tired. Maybe. It's fine to end here. Boom. 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 He heard something approaching in the distance. Goliath. Coming to end his life. In the darkness, Kai felt himself sinking like a drowning man. Until that whisper echoed in his heart. Then a light, bright and blazing like a star, tore through the darkness, engulfing him. Chapter 26, The Self-Proclaimed Sword Saint. On a barren wasteland, Kai opened his eyes. The sky was blood red, wind howling with ghostly cries. Opposite him stood a figure in black, repeating the line a third time. You are. He squinted, trying to make out the face, but all he could see was a shadowy blur. The shadow laughed arrogantly. Oddly, its voice sounded familiar. Who are you? And what is this place? Kai stepped forward, silently trying to summon the system. But there was no gate, no blue screen, nothing. What shocked him even more was that his body was perfectly intact, not just physically, but mentally too. Seeing the change in Kai's expression, the shadow laughed again like it was watching a joke. Let me guess, you're wondering where the system went, right? Don't worry. It's just us here. Nothing can interfere. Not even your system, you. The fact that this shadow knew about the system made Kai's eyes widen in shock. Who was he? A former host? The shadow scoffed, as if reading his thoughts. No need to guess. My connection to the system runs deeper than yours. But in terms of permissions? I'm not even 1/10,000th of you. Pretty ironic, huh? Ironic? Kai didn't find it funny, only terrifying. Just moments ago, he was on the verge of death. Now, he was fully healed, in a completely foreign world, cut off from the system. What kind of unfathomable power could do all that without him even noticing? Taking deep breaths to calm himself, Kai asked slowly, why did you bring me here? Why, the shadow tilted its head, then replied, because you're pathetic. Even with a system, you're still so weak. It's frustrating. So I brought you here to fight. Fight? Yes. A battle, though his face was hidden, his excited tone said it all. Either you kill me. Or I kill you. Kai's face darkened. Instinctively, he reached for his waist only to find nothing. Oh. Right. His black sword had been broken by Goliath. Well, since it's a duel on my turf, I won't cheat. Let's fight on your terms. Noticing Kai's motion, the shadow snapped his fingers. In the next second, shing. 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 Dozens of swords rained down, stabbing into the ground around them. Each one was identical to the black sword Kai had used, jet black blade, cold steel spine, gleaming edge. Happy now? Watching Kai's stunned face, the shadow casually picked up a sword, gave it a light shake, and it rang like thunder. A sharp aura surged out like a soaring beast. Clang, clang, clang. The aura from the shadow made all the swords tremble as if eager for their master's favor. Draw your sword, Kai. Isn't this what you're best at? Hearing those words, Kai furrowed his brows, said nothing, and stepped forward to grasp the hilt of the nearest blade. Grip the sword. 5 fingers tightened around the cold hilt, the hard sensation beneath the fingertips was all too familiar. Clang. With a light pull of the blade, Kai sank into a grounded stance, sword tip pointed at the shadowed face hidden beneath the hood. This mysterious man cloaked in darkness, how strong was he really? Did he have some kind of special ability? Kai had no idea. But the mere fact that he could summon dozens of long swords out of thin air was enough for Kai to go all out. Swordsman, Takashi Nekai. HMPH, swordsman? Facing the tense and focused Kai, the dark figure sneered. Holding his sword lazily in a reverse grip, his tone carried a mocking edge. Then let me make it simple. I am the Sword Saint. The self-proclaimed Sword Saint raised his blade slightly and added, come at me. I don't bother striking first against the weak. Kai didn't argue. He shifted his weight, muscles instantly tensed, then launched forward like a shadow. The combination of strength and agility stats delivered a swift and heavy strike. The cold, black blade tore through the air, ringing with metallic resonance. Clang. But the shadow merely raised his blade casually and blocked the strike. This is that sword technique you crafted from killing, isn't it? Even while defending, the black-robed figure had time to talk. This technique. It's as weak as you are. Pathetic. As soon as he finished, a violent force surged from the crossing blades, knocking Kai's sword aside. In a flash, offense and defense switched roles. Buzz. 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 Low-pitched sword hums rang out. As he knocked Kai's blade away, the shadow followed up with swift attacks, carving flower-like wounds on Kai's arms and legs. Feeling the sharp pain shoot through his limbs, Kai's expression twisted. Before he could retreat, the man sheathed his blade and spun around with a powerful kick to his chest. Bang! With a muffled thud, Kai flew back over 10 meters, his sword flying from his hand before crashing to the ground. The moment he landed, a crushing pain twisted his insides, forcing him into a curl as he coughed and gagged. Do you think I'm strong? After kicking Kai away, the dark figure didn't press the advantage. With a calm demeanor, he walked up slowly and said, "What if I told you I'm using the same strength as you? Same speed too? Would you believe it?" Kai didn't answer. He just knelt, gagging, glaring at the man before him. Same strength? Same speed? What a joke. Kai never thought himself unbeatable, but when it came to swords, he had some pride. If they really were using the same speed and power, there was no way he could be defeated so cleanly. Ha 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 ha. Knew you wouldn't believe me, sword in one hand, the man chuckled, covering his face with the other. Then how about this? You've got a skill, right? When fighting alone, your strength increases. Solo player level 2, when fighting alone, increases strength up to 600% of base stats. How does this guy know about that? Ignoring the shock and confusion in Kai's eyes, the man continued, "I'll keep using just this level of strength. That's fair, right? Fighting an injured man, is that what you call fair?" As the pain in his gut eased slightly, Kai climbed to his feet and locked eyes with the shadow. "You don't need to worry about that. I, the sword saint, wouldn't stoop so low." His tone was full of pride and disdain. He took 2 steps back, then pointed his sword at Kai's hands. "Check your wounds, huh?" Kai looked at his wrist and froze. Gone. The cuts made by the black-clothed man were gone. Not just his wrists, his ankles too. He ran his hand across the spot. Smooth. Flexing his fingers, he felt the tendons and muscles tense as normal. Completely healed? As long as you remain in this space, no matter how serious your injuries, as long as you don't pass out, you'll recover quickly. As Kai stared in disbelief, the shadow explained calmly, then chuckled. "Now you've got nothing holding you back, right?" Kai answered with action. He walked over to a long sword lodged in the ground, reached out, and pulled it free. Good. Seeing Kai raise his sword once more, the black-robed man nodded in satisfaction and raised his left hand, fingers spread. "Sword, come." Clang. In the distance, a sword hummed in response. Cutting through the air, a black blade shot like lightning toward him, slowed just as it reached, spun twice, and fell perfectly into his outstretched hand. Watching the man dual-wield his swords, Kai felt a strange sense of familiarity. Where had he seen that stance before? But was it even possible? Someone this strong, he'd never forget seeing them, right? As Kai racked his brain trying to place the image, the man held one sword forward and reversed the grip on the other, striking a bizarre pose. "K, let me show you what true swordsmanship looks like." The moment he finished, a sword flashed through the air. The man had thrown his right-hand sword straight at him. Kai instinctively raised his blade and blocked it just in time. But then, a sharp pain flared in his stomach. Ugh! Blood gushed up his throat. He looked down to see a dark blade driven deep into his abdomen. It twisted once, then pierced upward into his chest. Schlick! The sound of flesh being torn rang out. Strength and warmth drained from his body. Kai lifted his head, pupils dilating and contracting rapidly. Before him stood the so-called sword saint, holding his sword flat. The blade had pierced directly into Kai's heart. Then came his words. Chapter 27, The Self-Proclaimed Sword Saint, 2, Swing. 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 Under a blood-red sky with no day or night, Kai had no idea how long he'd been trapped in this place. He simply kept repeating the same motion, swinging his sword. That impossibly strong black-robed man had kept his promise. He never once used more power than Kai. And yet, Kai was defeated again and again. A sword is a weapon, and when 2 swords cross, the loser pays with death. Dozens of times? Hundreds? Thousands? The repeated cycle of failure and death had nearly numbed Kai's senses. Clang. Their blades clashed, sparks burst between them as they passed one another. But a fresh, narrow wound now stretched across Kai's throat. "K, do you know why you keep losing?" Turning back, the black figure shook the blood off his sword and charged again. Kai clenched his lips, refusing to answer. He lifted his blade and continued to fight. No, not fight, more like slaughter, just as the man described it. Same power. Same weapons. The reason for his failure could only be one thing. The gap in experience. Kai had no idea how long the so-called sword saint had trained, but compared to him, Kai wasn't even a novice. The man's strength was suffocating. Maybe he really was what he claimed, a true sword saint. So then what did that make Kai, standing here with a weak body, raising a defiant blade? Does it even matter anymore? Clang. Clang, he drew his left hand back, blocking the incoming attack, while lunging forward with his right. But his strike was once again casually deflected. Kai panted lightly. Even though he couldn't die here and all non-lethal wounds would heal quickly, his stamina still drained. Across from him, the black-clothed man was also breathing hard. Clearly, even he was using a lot of energy. But even then, Kai didn't stand the slightest chance of winning. As Kai paused to catch his breath, the man frowned, seemingly annoyed that Kai didn't attack him during his rest. He raised his blade and snapped, "Hey, Kai, can't you show a little courage?" Courage? Kai grinned at his words, a mocking smile forming on his face. "TCH. You're really starting to piss me off." Seemingly provoked by Kai's disdain, the man rushed in again, sword flashing. Limbs severed, intestines shredded, heart and lungs torn open. Horrific, fatal wounds rained down on Kai. But as long as he waited, he would recover. The body could heal, but the pain never faded from memory. What kind of grudge or hatred must one have to go this far? Killing someone once wasn't enough. Why subject him to this endless torment? Hadn't the man said it himself? That he looked down on Kai's weakness, and wanted to engage in a real fight to the death? Then why hadn't he landed a fatal blow yet? Why keep torturing him, relishing in this abuse? After being struck down yet again, Kai finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Why? Huh? Why won't you kill me? Lying on the ground, blood gushing from his abdomen, Kai stared at the man's face, as if trying to pierce through the darkness and see his expression. Why should I kill you? No, it's not about whether you should. Recalling everything the man had said and done, Kai clutched his half-healed gut and used his sword to push himself up. You can't kill me. You don't dare. Huh? Why the hell wouldn't I kill you, Kai? Did I knock your brain loose? Though his face was hidden, the man's voice turned noticeably tense. Then, as if trying to sound threatening, he added, I just think it's fun to mess with you, so I've been humoring you. Don't think I won't do it. Listening quietly to the obvious overcompensation in his words, a bold thought suddenly flashed through Kai's mind. Fine then. Kill me. He let go of the sword in his hand. The dark blade dropped with a clang. Kai stepped forward slowly, then reached out and grabbed the man's sword. Blood immediately flowed from his palm, but he didn't even flinch. He lifted the blade and pointed it at his own forehead. Do it. He uttered those two words with complete calm, then stood perfectly still. If his guess was wrong, he'd just die. So what? But if he guessed right? Locked in eye contact with Kai's calm gaze, the man in black trembled as he held his sword. It was clear he really wanted to drive it straight through Kai's head, but in the end, he let out a long sigh and, just like Kai, released the blade. Clang clang as the two swords fell to the ground, Kai let out a relieved smile. Just as expected. He was right. So, should I call you Sword Saint now? Or Light of Resolve? Facing Kai's proud smile, the man in black Light of Resolve spoke in a muffled tone from the shadows covering his face. When did you realize it? If I had to say, probably from the very beginning. Thick-skinned, Kai praised himself with a halo of genius as he continued, even the gods can't detect the system's presence, yet you managed to pull me into this bizarre place without triggering it. I've been suspicious of you since then. Just because of that? Of course not just that. Shaking his head, Kai looked around at the surroundings and continued, this world feels vast but lifeless, filled with a suffocating stench of blood and killing intent. It's enough to make someone want to vomit. And no matter the injury, it heals instantly. That's completely unnatural. That's why I concluded this whole world is fake. Even if the world is fake, how do you know I'm not real? Because you said something unnecessary. Unnecessary? Yes. Kai nodded, recalling the tone of Light of Resolve earlier. You said, my relationship with the system runs deeper than yours, but in terms of authority, I'm not even 1/10,000th of you. Sounds ironic, doesn't it? That line was your biggest mistake. But what's wrong with that? Completely unable to see what was wrong with his statement, Light of Resolve took a half step back, voice shaken. Seeing the once overpowering black-robed man suddenly turn passive after being seen through, Kai didn't hold back and explain directly, "If you claim to have a connection with the system, the first possibility I considered was that you're a former host. But the system only changes hosts when a host fails a trial and is erased. Yet you clearly exist, so that possibility was out. Which left only one conclusion: you're the current host. In other words, you're me. You are Takashi Nekai." Though Kai's deduction was flawless logically, it sounded absurd in practice. Light of Resolve found himself speechless. Who the hell thinks their enemy is actually themselves? This kind of deduction was basically pathological. If Kai knew what he was thinking, he would have shown an unreadable expression and responded with a certain little detective's favorite catchphrase: "Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth." Also, judging by your tone of jealousy, it's not hard to guess that your relationship with the system is one of subordination. And the only thing that the system could possibly dominate is the profession being passed on. Finishing his deduction, Kai exhaled and smiled. It was all just my speculation, without any evidence. So when I volunteered to die earlier, it was a gamble. But it looks like I was right. Yeah. Not wrong at all. His voice full of frustration, Light of Resolve slumped his shoulders and turned to walk toward the crimson-drenched world. "You saw through me this time. I admit defeat. I'll return the power to you." As he spoke, a low rumble echoed through the world. A realization dawned on Kai. This world was formed by his sword will. If that's the case. Kai stretched out his right hand thoughtfully and snapped his fingers. "Sword, come." The words were quiet, but they rippled through the space like thunder. A moment later, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, even millions of sword energies surged like a tidal wave, washing over the entire world. "K," from a distance, Light of Resolve's voice rang out. "Never lose again. Don't show that pathetic, ugly side. If you do, I'll never acknowledge you." As he shouted, his black-robed figure began to dissolve into light and scatter into the world. Kai silently watched his end, suddenly curious what face had been hidden in that shadow all along. Sensing his curiosity, Light of Resolve, whose body had nearly faded to nothing but a head, turned back. What appeared was a plain, ordinary male face. His name was Takashi Nekai. Aow. A deafening roar blasted nearby, the ground trembling under a monster's steps. Lying on the stone floor of the 17th level of the dungeon, Kai opened his eyes. A flicker of confusion passed through them. Then, he suddenly widened them and jumped to his feet. His body screamed in pain with every movement, bones shattered, stamina and HP drained, but Kai moved without hesitation. Compared to the torment of being endlessly killed in the sword will realm, this was nothing. "Sword, come." He opened his hand. Sword intent flickered and swirled. The light blue sword lying nearby let out a clear chime and flew into his grip like a returning swallow. "Good girl." Gripping the hilt, feeling the unity between sword and will, Kai looked up at the charging strengthened Goliath. He raised his sword and set it to strike. "Come, give me all your strength." As Kai moved, silver sparks began to gather around the blade. As they multiplied, they coated the sword in shining silver light. From a distance, people noticed their clothing and hair lightly drifting toward the battlefield. Gravity. When power reaches a critical point, it can bend the magnetic field. The sword's glow intensified until it was no longer a blade, just a mass of shimmering brilliance. Everything air, dust, debris, stones was drawn toward Kai. As they entered his sword-intense domain, they didn't get sliced or cut. They were pulverized into dust and swept around him like a storm. Incredible. This brilliance is unbelievable. Watching from afar, Hermes was genuinely impressed by what Kai had unleashed even after living for hundreds of millions of years. At the center of the storm, Kai felt surprisingly calm despite the overwhelming, transcendent power surging from his will. He raised his blade high like lifting a newborn star. Then brought it down. A river of light crashed down, drowning the towering red Goliath. Boom boom boom. The moment the strike landed, the entire 17th floor trembled. When the light faded, the Goliath lay still on the ground. Ma. Its dazed eyes stared up at the ceiling as it murmured. The last glimmer in its eyes faded. There were almost no visible wounds on the beast, but the attack had destroyed its soul. This was Light of Resolve, the force that severs the soul. He won? What was that? A unique skill? Is he really just level 2? From afar, the onlookers were stunned. Before they could recover, voices came from the elevator leading to the 18th floor. "This way, hurry." As a familiar girl's voice rang out, Asfi stepped into the chamber. She stopped dead when she saw the scene before her. "Geez, it's just a Goliath. Did we really need eyes for this?" "Shut up, Bet. Go help the wounded." TCH. Following Asfi, several adventurers in light armor entered. They too froze at what they saw. That's the Goliath? Staring at the massive red-scaled monster over 10 meters tall, a silver-haired beastman with a purple lightning tattoo on his left cheek muttered in disbelief. Yeah. That should be the Goliath. He turned toward the speaker, a plain-looking adventurer holding a thin sword, dressed in a simple black coat. What happened to it? Who are you? If you mean how it died, I killed it. As for who I am... Memories of Light of Resolve's arrogant voice flashed through Kai's mind as he grinned. A swordsman. Dakashi Nekai. Chapter 28, Safe Zone. In the safety zone on the 18th floor of the dungeon, inside the temporary camp of the Loki Familia. Inside a tent, Kai's upper body was bare, revealing a lean and muscular frame. But beneath his pale yellow skin, there were visible distortions and uneven bumps all over. During the battle with the strengthened Goliath, the bones throughout his body had been severely compressed, many had fractured or broken outright. He had been clenching his muscles tightly to hold those fragments in place just to keep moving. But now that he had relaxed, those broken bones scattered messily inside him. On top of that, he was covered in bruises and swelling from head to toe. His stamina was completely exhausted. I'm really, truly sorry, Lady Hestia. Lying face down on the bed, Kai kept apologizing to the goddess sitting behind him. This incident was largely due to his own overconfidence. Goliath, being a floor boss, was never a monster to take lightly. But he had insisted on pushing into the 17th floor, completely overestimating his own ability. That was why the situation had turned so dire. Lady Hestia, as Kai was about to continue apologizing, Hestia suddenly threw herself onto his back. Her small body trembled. Lady Hestia. Turning his head slightly to look behind him, Kai's gaze met a pair of watery, tear-filled sapphire eyes. Kai-kun. I'm so glad you're okay. After Kai had used Light of Resolve to slay the strengthened Goliath, his body had reached its limit. He collapsed on the ground, unable to move. Others had brought him to the safe zone on the 18th floor. He had only just fallen asleep in the tent when Hestia burst in. In just a few moments, she had stripped him and was now sitting on his back. Kai had already braced himself for scolding or reprimand. But none came. There was no anger, no blame, only the deep affection of a lily goddess who cherished him dearly. Hestia looked at Kai as if he were a precious treasure lost and now recovered. She buried her face in his back and wrapped her arms around his waist. You. I'm so glad you're safe. Feeling the wetness spreading across his back, Kai was momentarily stunned. Was she crying? Hestia had lived for over millions of years as a true god in the heavens. After such an unimaginably long time, even the purest heart should have become cunning. No, divine cunning. Actually, that doesn't sound right either. Anyway, the point is, with all her experience, why was Hestia crying? Was this a genuine emotional outburst? Or a test? Several thoughts raced through Kai's mind in an instant, some even bordering on the worst assumptions about human nature. But the moment he saw Hestia clinging to his back, sobbing like a child, all suspicion evaporated. He sighed and spoke in a comforting tone. Lady Hestia, I'm okay, aren't I? If anything, this time I brought it on myself. I underestimated how dangerous the dungeon is. Even though I've suffered several times before, I still made such a rookie mistake. Honestly, I'm hopeless. The first time he entered the dungeon, he nearly lost his life to a low-level goblin because he underestimated real combat. Later, relying on his superior stats, he fought down to the 3rd floor, only to get swarmed by a horde of monsters. If not for the Black Swordsman class granted by the system, he would have died then and there. He had faced near death several times, all because of overconfidence. He thought he'd matured after more than a month of reflection, but even now, he was making the same mistakes. Humans were sometimes irredeemable, prone to pride after temporary advantage, forgetting every painful lesson learned. Thinking back on his actions, Kai felt disappointed in himself. Useless. Never learning from mistakes. But instead of reproach, the goddess offered warmth and kindness. Kai-kun, it's natural for children of the lower world to make mistakes. Don't blame yourself too much. In fact, it's exactly because of this unpredictable variety that life in the lower world is so much more colorful than the heavens. That's why we gods willingly seal our divine powers to come live with you. He turned to glance at the tiny girl leaning against his back, teary-eyed and looking up at him. This was a real goddess. They say the grace of a beauty is deep. Now, receiving compassion from a goddess, Kai couldn't help but feel a strange warmth in his heart. Still. Lady Hestia. Could you loosen your grip just a little? It's really painful. Overcome with emotion, Hestia had been tightly hugging his lower back since earlier. Admittedly, this kind of close contact came with its perks, but only under normal circumstances. Right now, Kai could feel his fractured bones groaning under the strength of the hug. Sorry. Hestia quickly let go and sat up behind him, pulling out several intricately designed glass vials. As Kai watched the pale purple liquid inside one of them shimmer, he licked his lips. He was suddenly very thirsty. Lady Hestia, this is... You better be grateful, Kai-kun. This is some pretty high-grade potion. She waved the vial proudly between her fingers, then popped the cork. A sweet scent filled the tent. Potion. Hearing her boast, Kai swallowed hard. A real potion. What would it taste like? Honestly, after fighting non-stop since last night, he was parched. Before he could think further, Hestia poured the pale purple potion directly onto his back and gently spread it with her hands, making sure every inch was covered. TSS. Feeling the cool sensation on his back and her soft hands rubbing it in, Kai involuntarily sucked in a breath, his face turning a bit red. As a goddess, Hestia was unimaginably ancient. There was no reason to feel shy having an elder apply medicine. Still, with her petite form sitting on his lower back, her warmth and softness were hard to ignore, and Kai found it difficult to stay calm. But the embarrassment quickly vanished. The potion she applied was clearly top tier. Within moments, it had been absorbed through his pores. Torn muscles mended rapidly, damaged tissue began to regenerate, and dislocated bones shifted back into place as if guided by invisible hands. Such an effect was unheard of. He'd only ever used low-level potions before, good for minor fatigue, maybe. Nothing like this. Lady Hestia. What is this? Really? Feeling the tingly, numbing sensation of his body recovering so quickly, Kai couldn't help but ask. It's something made by a friend of mine. For people from the lower world like you, it's absolutely first class. After pouring the entire purple potion, Hestia uncorked another bottle of pale green potion and spoke seriously. Kai-kun, I don't know what that power you used earlier was, but don't ever use it lightly again. Huh? Kai blinked. That power. Did she mean the light of resolve? That red wind or whatever it was that flared up around you? Red wind, my ass. That was Sordora. Realizing she was referring to the Sordora from his bloodlust state, Kai immediately understood her concern. In bloodlust, the stronger the aura you want, the more life force you pay. While life force isn't as hard to replenish as lifespan, draining it too often could still ruin someone's foundation. As Hestia spread the green potion over his back, Kai could feel his depleted energy and blood slowly recovering, and he let out a long sigh. Lady Hestia. Thank you. With Hestia's potions, Kai fully recovered in half a day. He dressed, picked up the borrowed green rapier from beside the bed, and stepped out of the tent. His black sword had been shattered by the enhanced Goliath, and this sword had been taken borrowed from someone else. Now he needed to return it and properly thank its owner. Though, come to think of it, he never got permission to borrow it. He'd just taken it. Hopefully the owner wouldn't mind. If she did, he'd have to sincerely apologize. Outside the tent was a camp set up in a clearing beside the forest. Adventurers passed by chatting casually, weapons stowed, seemingly unaware they were in the heart of a dangerous dungeon. But this was still the dungeon's middle level. Fortunately, this particular floor was a safe zone. No monsters appeared here. The environment was relatively pleasant, a good place for adventurers to rest and regroup. Scanning the area, Kai was about to ask someone about the camp's layout when a faint green light floated down in front of him. Focusing on the glowing speck, Kai frowned slightly. What's this? Chapter 29, Swordsman and Ferocious Wolf. He gently reached out and caught the soft green speck on his fingertip. It had a fine, powdery texture. Looking up, he saw countless glowing motes slowly drifting down from the crystal ceiling above. In the original Dan Mickey story, there were no such things as falling light specks on the 18th floor. Is this because of me again? Gazing at the rain of glowing particles, Kai's expression grew grim. Because of his presence as a transmigrator, many events from the original timeline had already changed, some drastically. Plot lines were shifting, outcomes diverging, all due to his interference. And each deviation carried a ripple effect that changed even more. The most recent major divergence had been the enhanced Goliath they encountered on the 17th floor. Not a fond memory, by any means. He stared at the sky full of light for a while. Seeing nothing else unusual, he shook his head and looked away. Hopefully, he was just overthinking it. The camp of the Loki Familia wasn't very large, but the people moving in and out of it were diverse. There were Loki Familia members, support workers, merchants delivering supplies from the surface, and adventurers from other familias using it as a temporary rest stop. In the dungeon, everyone shared the same enemy. That common threat unified interests and blurred divisions, so even adventurers from other groups were allowed to rest here while traveling to or from deeper floors. Thanks to that openness, Kai had been allowed to sleep in a proper tent instead of somewhere cold and rocky. After a bit of wandering, he found the person he was looking for. Sitting at an outdoor table, carefully sharpening a silver dagger with a whetstone, was a female adventurer in a gray-brown hooded cloak. "Hello." He raised a hand in greeting and took a seat across from her, placing the rapier on the table and sliding it forward. "Here's your sword." "Thank you." She looked down at the rapier without saying anything, her hands still methodically working the whetstone as her eyes lifted to meet his. Though the hood obscured her features, the pale chin peeking out was enough for Kai to be sure she was beautiful. "I don't remember saying I'd lend it to you." Her voice was calm but carried a cold edge. Still, it was clear and pleasant to the ear, not harsh. Just as he'd expected. Being called out like this was no surprise. Kai forced a smile. "Well, it was a desperate moment. I didn't really have time to ask properly." "HMPH. Slick talker." She scoffed and went back to sharpening her dagger, clearly not interested in continuing the conversation. "Either way, thank you. Without your sword, I probably wouldn't be alive to return it." Though he'd just been brushed off, Kai still offered sincere thanks and stood to leave. Shing. The sound of a sword being drawn came from behind him. Then he heard her voice again. "But this child," she said, referring to the sword, "said it really liked you. For its sake, I'll forgive you this once. I'm Rulian." "Rulian?" He turned in surprise to get a better look at the woman behind the name. She had drawn the rapier and was gently running her fingers down its blade. Her hood was now down, revealing a breathtaking face and a pair of sharp, elegant ears. An elf. Kai had already guessed she was one and had seen her image countless times in the anime, but facing a real elf now, he was still stunned. Unlike the divine beauty of a goddess, Ru's presence reminded him of wind through the hills, of the moon in a quiet night sky. Just looking at her made his mind conjure vivid images of a lush, thriving forest. She noticed his dazed expression and frowned, letting out a small huff. "Kai-san, if you have no further business, please leave." "And no, nothing else." "But Ru-san, how did you know my name?" She paused mid-sharpen, looked up, and replied in the same aloof tone. "Kai-kun's name is already well known throughout Orario. What's so strange about me knowing it? Or do you prefer I call you the Dark Holy Sword?" Cough. Hearing her utter that ridiculous nickname, a prank by the gods, Kai's face turned red. He waved his hand quickly. "Well then, goodbye, Ru-san." "Ru." "Calling me Ru-san is too formal. You can just call me Ru." That caught him off guard for a moment. Then he smiled and nodded. "In that case. See you, Ru." "Goodbye, Dark Sword Saint." "Forgot his title, so we're going with Dark Sword Saint." He glanced back at her as she returned to sharpening her dagger, her expression unreadable. He suddenly had a flashback. "Then Lily, please stop. This is way too embarrassing." "Yes, Kai-sama, yeah." This really felt familiar. This seemingly cold, aloof ice-cold elf beauty, could it be she's secretly a mischievous one, just like Lily? Noticing the strange look in Kai's eyes, Ru paused her motion and shot him a sharp glare, cold as a blade. Cough, cough. Afraid that she might see through his thoughts, Kai quickly looked away and turned to leave. The dungeon didn't have day or night, so there was no natural sense of time. But on the 18th floor, there was at least one way to keep track: the massive glowing white crystal embedded in the ceiling. This crystal's brightness followed the sun's cycle. Around noon, it would blaze with intense brilliance, while at night, it would dim. Veteran adventurers could judge the time based on its glow. Right now, it was clearly noon. All around the camp, stoves were set up or bonfires lit. Members of the same familia gathered in groups to eat meals brought down from the surface by merchants. Before the Hestia familia's tent, a bonfire crackled, radiating a fierce heat. Kai held a tray in his hands containing a lumpy mash of meat and potatoes. It tasted salty, and frankly, it wasn't good. Just barely edible. As for the texture, what kind of texture do you expect from something half-liquid? "Kai-kun, aren't you going to eat?" Seeing him just stirring the food around with his spoon, never taking a bite, Hestia scooted over and sat next to him. Hearing her, Lily, sitting not far away, also looked over. "Sorry, Lady Hestia, I'm not very hungry." Not wanting to be seen as a picky eater even at his age, Kai forced a bitter smile to deflect. But what he was really thinking was, meat. I want meat. I want to eat meat so badly. After a whole night of constant battles, especially against Goliath and that enhanced version, his stamina was running on empty. Right now, he felt like he could eat half a cow. And yet, what the hell was this stuff? Potato mash? Mashed meat with potatoes? Forget the taste, how could anyone fill their stomach on this? As he stirred with a spoonful of frustration, a strong, savory scent of roasted meat wafted over from behind. Grr. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and turned around to see a silver-haired werewolf. Betlaga. The man was none other than the Loki Familia's frontline powerhouse, the werewolf Betlaga. Kai only glanced at his face briefly, then all his attention was immediately drawn to what Bet held in his hand. "Hey, swordsman Chi, I heard you weren't hungry. So I guess you don't need this, huh?" Looking down on Kai like a predator, Bet sneered and held up a whole roasted lamb leg, pretending to toss it away. Wait a second. Kai slammed his tray of potato mush down and grabbed Bet's wrist perhaps a little too forcefully in his desperation. "Please don't. I'm starving." "Oh?" Bet raised an eyebrow at the grip. A smirk spread across his scarred face, etched with lightning-shaped tattoos. "In that case." He shook Kai's hand off, flipped the lamb leg in his hand, and grinned. "I wasn't planning to do this, but your bold attitude really surprises me. A mere level 2 newbie dares to grab a high-level adventurer like that? Or maybe after beating the floor boss, you think you're strong enough to challenge us veterans?" "No, I didn't mean doesn't matter." Bet cut him off, voice sharpening. "Now I really want to teach you a lesson. Show you what it means to follow the rules down here. Here's the deal: one-on-one. Win or lose, the lamb leg's yours. You game?" Hearing Bet's mocking tone, Kai's excitement from the smell of roast meat cooled off. His expression darkened. Then he shook his head slowly. "TCH. What, scared?" Bet's eyes gleamed with disdain. He hated cowards more than weaklings. "It's not that I'm scared. I just think your terms need a tweak." Staring into Bet's eyes, Kai said calmly, "I'll take your challenge. If I win, the lamb leg is mine. If I lose, I'll take nothing." That caught Bet off guard. He raised an eyebrow, unsure whether to be angry or amused. "Ha! I'm a level 5 elite of the Loki Familia, the ferocious wolf? And you're just a level 2 upstart. You'll regret this." His face closed in until it was less than 10 centimeters from Kai's, his sharp beast-like eyes brimming with malice and bloodlust. Bet had already been itching for a fight with this so-called swordsman since he saw him on the 17th floor. But Kai stared back without flinching. "Then. You'd better be ready." Chapter 30, Reign of Light. The Loki Familia's camp wasn't large, and news of Kai's duel with Bet spread quickly. "Is that kid crazy? PFFT, Bet, don't finish him too quickly. Ah, youth. So impulsive." On a clearing near the camp, Kai and Bet faced each other from several meters apart. Adventurers had gathered to watch. "K," Bet called out, dual daggers in hand, smiling with mock patience, "I'll give you one last chance. Apologize now, and I might let this go. Between adventurers, each level is a huge gap. If you think beating a level 4 floor boss makes you ready for us, you're dead wrong." Kai frowned and muttered, "Geez, enough with the speech. Or are you afraid of getting embarrassed if I beat you?" "You." Bet's face twisted with rage. The bloodthirsty glow in his eyes flared. "You're dead. I'll bash your face in, stomp it into the dirt, and you'll be licking my boots, Kai." "Fine. Come at me, then." Kai calmly turned to the crowd and shouted, "Hey, white-haired brat." "Yes, senpai." Bell tossed the iron sword hanging at his waist toward Kai. Reaching into the air, Kai's body surged with sword intent. Clang. The sword shot out of its sheath, humming as it flew into his hand like a guided missile. The moment he gripped it, Kai's aura transformed. No longer an average adventurer, he now radiated overwhelming presence, sharp, commanding, like a peerless sword forged in battle. Even the wind around him felt sharp, pressing heavily on the surrounding crowd. But Kai didn't care. He twirled the blade twice to get a feel, then pointed it at Bet. Feeling the pressure, Bet's smug look faded. He gripped his weapons tighter and vanished. A level 5 adventurer's stats easily reached hundreds. Combined with his unique skill Fenris Wolf's Rush, Bet shot forward like a bolt of lightning, covering 10 meters in a blink. Kai didn't even react. With a sneer, Bet thought, he didn't even see me. Just a rookie after all. But sorry, I don't go easy on the weak. His blades howled toward Kai's unguarded body. And then danger. A chill shot up Bet's spine. On instinct, he aborted the strike and leapt back. Landing, he looked down. A smear of red blood touching his cheek, he felt that he was bleeding. But when did it happen? Kai hadn't moved at all. Now wary, Bet kept his distance, no longer charging recklessly. The spectators, however, didn't see the threat. "What's wrong, Bet? Get in there. He's just a level 2. Are you scared? Maybe he's toying with his prey." TCH. Ignoring the heckling, Bet studied Kai. That's when he noticed it. Wind? A red aura swirled faintly around Kai. It didn't look like much, but it made Bet's instincts scream. "That's not wind," Kai smiled. "It's sword aura." Sword aura, generated by draining HP through sword intent. Enough to cut through Goliath's invulnerable scales. Ordinary flesh and blood like Bet didn't stand a chance. Even if Bet were level 6, 7, or 8 without defense skills or gear, Kai in Bloodlust mode, sheathed in sword aura, was untouchable. That was why he accepted this duel. Sword aura? Bet blinked. In his mind, sword aura was just shockwaves caused by fast slashes, nothing that could do this. Especially not a red aura just appearing out of thin air when Kai didn't even move. You call this sword aura? He stared at Kai like he was talking nonsense. But it didn't matter whether Bet believed him. Kai stood still, quietly waiting for the solo player passive to hit its peak. As a level 2 solo player, Kai could multiply all stats by up to 6 times. His strength was nearing 100. His speed already passed that. While most adventurers capped out around 60 at level 2, Kai had pushed every stat to its system limit. Others might reach level 4 with these values. But he would soon break into level 3. All stat values are system-based, not the canon Felna values. Even Bet, newly promoted to level 5, only had base stats around 300. Once Kai's bonus is maxed out, he'd be able to fight Bet head-on. Kai had time. But Bet was growing anxious. His beast instincts told him Kai's killing intent was only rising. To improve stats in battle. Could this be some kind of special skill too? And didn't he just reach level 2 not long ago? He already has multiple skills at level 2? Since when did special skills become this cheap? There was no time to hesitate. Dry twigs and dirt crunched loudly underfoot as Bet lunged forward again, twin swords raised, charging straight at Kai. Burn and consume, Hattie. As he rushed in, a sharp chant escaped his lips. A fiery glow engulfed his blades, distorting the surrounding air with heat. Hattie fire attribute enchantment magic, with mana drain and damage absorption effects. Bet was aiming to push through that faint red aura around Kai's body and finish the fight while Kai was still weak. What even Bet hadn't realized was that, by now, he no longer saw Kai as a low-level rookie adventurer. He had unconsciously started using his full strength, treating Kai as a powerful foe. Kai smiled as Bet closed in. He had waited long enough. His mental and physical stats had reached a point where he could clearly track Bet's movements with dynamic vision, and his body could keep up with the reaction speed. Then, take your final bow. Calm words left his lips. They reached Bet mid-charge, making his eyes widen in shock. He barely got a syllable out before he saw it. Light. Countless silver-white specks gathered along the iron sword in Kai's hand, transforming the once ordinary blade into something like a weapon forged from starlight. From a faint candle glow, the light bloomed into dazzling radiance, intense, blazing, heavy, almost tangible. In the next instant, a slash from that sword of starlight came crashing toward Bet. Boom. The blast was so loud it rattled the eardrums. As the sword struck, it compressed and distorted the air, tore through space itself with crackling noise. Blinding light erupted like a newborn star, dimming the world around it. A raging storm surged across the entire 18th floor. Twigs, broken weapons, dirt, and stones, everything in the path of the blast was swept up into chaos. Moments later, the radiance around the blade faded, and the swirling air finally stilled. Facing the slash head-on, Bet trembled uncontrollably, his pupils dilated lifelessly, fur on his ears and tail standing on end. He stared at the sword hovering before his eyes, at Kay, whose entire body was cloaked in faint red sword energy. Bet had the urge to scream, but all he could manage was a trembling question. What? What was that move? Nothing special. Just a regular swing. Kai casually answered Bet's question, then lowered his sword. As he did, Bet collapsed to his knees, gasping for air like all his strength had been drained. A regular swing. Struggling to breathe, trying to calm his pounding heart, Bet stared at him in disbelief. No way. A normal swing could never be that strong. Believe what you want. Kai shrugged, offering no explanation. It was just a normal sword swing enhanced, of course, by the light of resolve. Light of resolve, a soul-forged brilliance that unleashes a strike beyond limits. Just like the system's note described, it was a miracle blow that defied level gaps and transcended boundaries. This is cheating, really. Kai shook his head with a helpless sigh and turned back toward the camp, ready to enjoy the spoils of his fight. But just as he turned, he froze. Hey, Bet. Doesn't it seem like those glowing specks are multiplying? What glowing specks? The ones drifting down from the ceiling. Bet was just getting up when Kai spoke. He looked up instinctively and froze. They really are multiplying? From the crystalline ceiling of the 18th floor, pale green specks were drifting down like misty rain. Countless. Almost blindingly dense. Chapter 31, a drastic change in the plot. A shower of light filled the space. Beautiful, yet something about it unsettled Kai. This development had completely diverged from the original plot. It was disturbing. Was something about to happen? Or was he just being paranoid? Kai-kun. Just as Kai stood deep in thought, Hestia burst from the crowd and leapt into his arms. Lady Hestia? Seeing her rubbing against his chest affectionately, Kai stiffened awkwardly. As a loner otaku in his 20s, he was tempted to return the hug and feel the warmth of a goddess. But with everyone watching, and her being his patron deity, he hesitated, hands frozen midair. That was amazing, Kai-kun. Even I was scared. Hestia clung to him tightly, rubbing her head against his chest with admiration. That thing just now. You know, the whoosh bang bang bang, boom thing. It was incredible. Hearing her sound effects, Kai couldn't help but smile. He raised a hand to pat her head like a child, about to say something when suddenly, crack, a familiar breaking sound came from above. Huh. As it echoed, the ground began to tremble. Not just the ground, the entire 18th floor was shaking, groaning. As if the massive dungeon walls were collapsing in pain. No way. Kai instinctively hugged Hestia tightly to steady her, a terrible suspicion flashing through his mind. Is this an earthquake? Wha? I almost fell. The dungeon is trembling? The onlookers who had gathered around the clearing began to panic, their calm shattered by the sudden quake. As the tremors intensified, Kai's fears grew. He snapped his head up toward the ceiling. You've got to be kidding. What is it? Hearing his voice, Hestia also looked up and her face froze. No way. This can't be real. The massive crystal ceiling above the entire 18th floor and especially the central white crystal was covered in cracks. Beneath the surface, massive shadows were descending. Dozens? Hundreds? Impossible to count. They overlapped, pressing toward the lowest layer of the crystal barrier. Crack crack, the cracks spread rapidly. The ceiling looked like poorly glued pottery, about to shatter at the slightest touch. So this was it. Watching the sky fall, Kai understood. The glowing rain wasn't some pretty visual effect, it was the dungeon's malice made manifest. Dust from the crystal ceiling's internal collapse. From the moment they entered the 18th floor, the glowing specks had been signaling danger. But no one paid attention. Not even Kay, who had read the original story. He knew about the possible event of a mutated floor boss invading the safe zone, but since Hestia hadn't unleashed her arcanum like in the canon, he'd let his guard down. Once again he'd been too careless. Clink. A crystal shard from the most cracked part of the ceiling sparkled briefly before falling and shattering on the ground. That sound snapped everyone to attention. They all looked up and saw it. Clink, clink. More shards fell. The creatures inside the crystal drew closer, revealing their true forms. Goliaths? No way. This is a safe zone, why would a floor boss appear here? Panic erupted. Some adventurers screamed uncontrollably. But it was too late. The cracks continued to spread. The final barrier was giving way. Hey! White-haired brat. Lily. Over here. Seeing that the monsters inside the ceiling were far larger than standard Goliaths, with even a few enhanced variants covered in red scales, Kai turned and shouted to Belle and Lily, who were frozen in place. The two snapped out of it and ran to Kai's side, drawing their weapons. Listen up, white-haired brat. Kai slowly unsheathed his simple iron sword and looked Belle straight in the eyes. I may call you a brat, but you're the only other man in the Hestia familia. So no matter what danger we face, you are not allowed to run away like a coward. Protect Lady Hestia and Lily. Got it? His tone wasn't forceful or dramatic, but it hit Belle like a hammer. To protect was to shoulder responsibility. To accept that, he had to face monsters that terrified him. Fear was natural. Any low-level adventurer would fear a Goliath. But he remembered Kay, covered in blood, sword swinging like rain on the 17th floor. Despite the wounds, he shone like a hero from a legend. He couldn't say no. Terror gripped his legs, but he couldn't refuse. It was like a fire ignited within him, coursing through his entire body. Following that soul-shaking impulse, Belle tightened his grip on his short sword. It gave him the courage to stop trembling. Yes, senpai. Good. Kai nodded, seeing the fire in Belle's eyes. Then boom, a thunderous crash echoed across the floor. The ceiling had collapsed. The glowing rain stopped. Crystal shards no longer fell. There was no need for them anymore. Heavy breathing replaced the sound of shattering crystals. From above, the monsters had arrived. At the same time, as if their hearts were linked, everyone turned their gaze upward. Like rice seedlings planted in a field, countless giant heads emerged from the crystal above. Their crimson eyeballs rolled constantly, scanning and glaring down at the floors below. As their upper bodies fully pushed out of the crystal, these monsters seemed eager to escape. They pressed hard against the crystal with their hands, trying to pull their bodies free, while unleashing furious roars. Aio. 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 No one could understand what those roars meant, whether they carried meaning or were simply the howls of beasts. But the moment those roars echoed out, panic swept through the people. Monsters like Goliath, high-tier floor bosses, were always tagged as hard to conquer or team challenge required. Now, faced with dozens of Goliaths, both solo and team adventurers lost their will to fight. Everyone started running toward the vertical ladder passages connecting floors. As for the strong members of the Loki Familia? Yes, they each had the strength to take down a Goliath on their own. But even they could only handle one or two at a time. With dozens of Goliaths emerging, even if they had 3 heads and 6 arms, they couldn't kill them all. The panicking adventurers shouted curses, prayers, and cries of anger while the Goliaths roared violently. Belle and Lily stayed close to Kay, watching the black-clad man's composed stance. Their nervous hearts began to calm. Held in Kai's arms, Hestia suddenly wriggled slightly. This god who had lived for over 1,000,000 years actually felt shy. Kai-kun, you're really dependable. Hearing Hestia's soft whisper, Kai glanced at her slightly flushed cheeks and allowed a faint smile to appear on his serious face. Of course. I'm the big brother of the Hestia Familia. I have to stay composed in times like these. He let go, gently nudging Hestia between Belle and Lily, then stepped forward alone. The blade in his hand shimmered faintly red like the petals of a mottle flower, silently blooming. Boom! A thunderous explosion erupted nearby. Smoke and dust engulfed the ground. Moments later, the dust settled, revealing a towering monster. Taking a deep breath, the newly born Goliath on this supposed safe floor beyond the bounds of the 17th level raised its head high and unleashed a roar that shook the entire level. The roar of the first Goliath hadn't faded when a second erupted. Then a third, fourth, fifth. Instead of the rain of light, the sky was now filled with a storm of monsters. Witnessing this scene beyond comprehension, adventurers broke into total panic after a brief silence. The monsters' roars mixed with the adventurers' screams, creating a chaotic, nightmarish painting of the underworld. Kai stared coldly at the chaos. The red sword energy swirling around him darkened, deepening in color. It circled him, starlight condensing onto the iron blade. In the next instant, he lowered his stance. His sword dragged a long trail of light as he charged at the nearest Goliath. Chapter 32, The One Who Plunders the World. The deep red silhouette charged through the chaotic crowd, trailing a brilliant silver glow, targeting the roaring giant. Clang as the distance between them shrank, a piercing metallic clash rang out, almost louder than the Goliath's roar. A dazzling sword flash sliced through the air, slashing hard at the monster's ankle. The blade silently severed tendons and ligaments. When it struck bone, the silver glow intensified, cutting deep like a hot knife through butter. Its ankle severed, blood gushed from the wound. The Goliath let out a pitiful howl and toppled to the side. As it fell, that sword glow flashed again, this time aimed at. Clang! The sword tip pierced the Goliath's forehead, clashing against the skull with a sharp sound. Kai gripped the hilt tightly. Staring into the monster's crimson eyes, he was surprised by the emotions he saw: fear, horror, confusion, reluctance. Monsters had such complex feelings? The thought lasted only a moment. Then the silver light flared again, piercing straight through the monster's head. Swordora burst inside its skull, grinding everything within to mush. By the time Kai withdrew the blade, the Goliath, whose forehead now bore only a tiny bloody hole, had already collapsed, lifeless. Only then did the others realize what had just happened. Their eyes filled with disbelief as they stared at Kai. This guy was way too strong. From drawing his sword to slaying the monster, only a few breaths had passed. The Goliath, which should have required a team of level 3 or level 4 adventurers, had been killed by him alone. Who was he? What level was he? As everyone pondered this, someone suddenly shouted, "I remember now. That's Kai!" Kai? That name sounded familiar. Where had they heard it? Ah! I remember too. He's the Dark Sword Saint. The Hestia Familia's young blade. Kai. With those arrogant, wildly individualistic titles, Dark Sword Saint, Young Blade, everyone immediately recalled the stories. In Orario, there might be people who didn't know Kai by name, but no one would fail to recognize the Dark Sword Saint. That title alone had inspired countless legends tearing through level 4 and level 5 adventurers, leveling terrain with a single move, a future disaster in the making. Of course, most rational adventurers dismissed those stories as exaggerations. After all, Kai was only level 2. There was no way he could perform such feats. But now, after witnessing how he cleanly took down that Goliath, and recalling how he defeated ferocious Wolf Van Argenbet with a single sword at the training ground, people began to believe maybe those rumors weren't all fiction. Noticing the change in everyone's expressions, and hearing the murmurs of Dark Sword Saint and Young Blade, Kai's serious demeanor cracked. He awkwardly twirled his sword before charging at the next Goliath. The entire crystal ceiling shattered, plunging the 18th floor into dimness like the others. Dozens upon dozens of Goliaths rampaged across the floor. Their massive feet thundered with every step, shaking the rocky terrain. A supposed safe zone had now birthed dozens of floor bosses. No adventurer, veteran or rookie, could stay calm. Everyone rushed toward the vertical ladders, desperate to flee this slaughterhouse until... Rumble just as they approached the exit, a violent tremor came from the ladder passages. Massive boulders fell, sealing both the upper and lower floor exits. What the hell? Damn it. Why did it collapse all of a sudden? Young adventurers who had just reached the 18th floor screamed in confusion. Why was everything going wrong at once? First, floor bosses spawning en masse, and now both exits blocked? It was like the dungeon wanted them dead. Ceiling. Unlike the clueless rookies, experienced adventurers immediately understood the situation. The dungeon is enraged. These aren't normal cave-ins. The rocks are laced with the dungeon's hatred. If we don't kill all the Goliaths, no one's getting out. The news of the sealed 18th floor spread fast. Adventurers who were fleeing or fighting all froze upon hearing it. The way back had been cut off. Now, only two options remained, win or die. No, maybe a third, surrender and wait for death. Bastards. Who the hell's just gonna wait to die? Screw that. A towering, burly man raised his head and roared. His furious red face twisted as he swung a spiked club and charged at a Goliath. That act seemed to flip a switch. Around him, adventurers raised their weapons and surged toward the towering giants. The madness spread like wildfire. Soon, nearly all adventurers were in battle. Goliaths stomped and roared with sonic shock waves. Adventurers charged like tides, slamming into their bodies again and again. The 18th floor had become a bloody battlefield. The earth dyed red, some Goliath blood, but mostly adventurer blood. In such a brutal war, strong individuals became stars. Weaker adventurers naturally rallied around them. Among these stars, a few stood out most. On the western island town of Rivera, a golden figure danced with a blood-stained rapier. Nearly 10 Goliaths had already fallen to her blade. Loki Familia's sword princess, Eyes Wallenstein. On a northern cliff, a blue-haired girl lay prone, bow in hand. Beside her sat her god, Hermes. She supported adventurers below with pinpoint arrows. Thanks to her, casualties in that area were minimal. Hermes Familia's omnipotent one Perseus, Asphial Andromeda. In a sunken area to the east, a green-haired elf in a cloak wielded a wooden sword, wind magic swirling around her. She held off several Goliaths, giving adventurers time to organize a counterattack. From the hostess of fertility, allies unknown, elf adventurer Relion. And finally, on the central plains, a black-haired man rampaged like a meat grinder. Hestia Familia's dark sword saint, Kaita Kashina. Unlike the other battlegrounds, there wasn't a single adventurer within dozens of meters around Kai. But dozens of meters beyond, a huge crowd had gathered, occupying 80% of the entire floor's remaining adventurers. Between them and Kai, 12 red-scaled enhanced Goliaths had encircled him completely. Just before, Kai had slain another Goliath, but before he could rest, a thunderous stampede came. The 12 enhanced Goliaths ignored all others and trapped him. Only then did Kai realize. The others were just a prelude. This was the dungeon's true gift to him. Such special treatment. I'm flattered. Kai muttered, looking at the 12 towering Goliaths around him. But instead of charging, they surrounded him and spoke in clumsy unison, leave the dungeon. Thief. Kai frowned. Why call him a thief again? If it was about magic stones, every adventurer took those, didn't they? Unable to figure it out, Kai raised his glowing sword. In the next instant, whoom, multiple bursts of radiant light erupted with a single slash. As the sword fell, the ring of enhanced Goliaths collapsed. Seeing Kai slay over a dozen clearly stronger Goliaths with one strike, nearby adventurers raised their weapons and roared in triumph. After hours of battle, only a third of the adventurers remained. But the near 100 Goliaths had finally been wiped out. As the last one fell on the central plain, everyone finally exhaled. Some roared with blood-soaked pride. Others cried like children. Most just wore grim expressions as they dragged the corpses of fallen comrades' companions from the same familia or squad. The heavy mood spread. Even Belle, who had been excited about surviving the fight, now looked gloomy. Hey, white-haired brat. Seeing Belle standing alone, looking sadly at the dead, Kai walked over and patted his back. Senpai. Belle turned and saw Kai beside him. His lips moved, wanting to speak, but no words came. You did great this time. Huh? Seeing Belle's confusion, Kai repeated, you did great, white-haired brat. Even I'm a bit impressed. And no. That's not true. Senpai, you. I'm not. Ah. Hearing Kai's praise, Belle's face turned red. His words stumbled into a mess. Kai was briefly stunned by Belle's over-the-top reaction. Then he let out a light chuckle, patted Belle's shoulder, and said seriously, "All right, kid, there's a limit to modesty. You really did great this time. You mustered the courage to face a monster like the Goliath, and even managed to protect both Lady Hestia and Lily. If I had to describe you, I'd say you were like a real hero." "No, I'm definitely not a hero." Feeling Kai's broad, warm hand on his shoulder, Belle suddenly felt something stir in his heart, and his nose tingled slightly. "Oh, come on. Just accept the compliment properly, will you? If you keep acting all awkward, I'm going to get mad, you know." "Yes, senpai." Satisfied to see Belle regaining his posture and composure, Kai turned and started walking toward the forest at the edge of the plain. "Senpai, where are you going?" "Somewhere quiet. I need to think about a few things." Waving behind him, Kai walked alone into the forest. "System." Once he was sure there was no one else nearby, Kai called out in a low voice. Ding! A light blue screen appeared, quietly floating in front of him. It looked no different from usual. Staring at the screen for a moment, Kai suddenly asked, "Those monsters earlier. Why did they call me a thief?" "Because the host has been plundering the dungeon's origin," the system answered coldly and instantly, not hiding anything. "I plundered the dungeon's origin?" Kai was stunned. Then he reacted and quickly asked, "When did that happen?" "I didn't even know about it." Every time the host kills a monster in the dungeon, the system seizes the moment when the monster's essence returns to the dungeon and forcibly creates a channel to extract a fragment of the origin. This energy is then used to enhance the host's inherited class abilities. "What?" Kai's composure shattered. His eyes widened at the interface, as if trying to find some hidden detail in the glowing screen. "So all my skill upgrades have been powered by the dungeon's origin? The host may understand it that way, damn it." Kai cursed. Now it all made sense. The dungeon didn't go crazy on him because it sensed he was a transmigrator, it was because the system had been quietly robbing its origin behind his back. No wonder the dungeon kept sending waves of monsters after him whenever he entered. He thought it was just bad luck. Turned out, the system had been stirring up the hornet's nest. Now that he finally understood, another thought struck him. "So what you're saying is, you don't actually have the power to enhance my skills. That's why you've been stealing from the dungeon's core. But what happens if I leave this world?" The system replied bluntly and concisely. "Every world has its own origin, so that means I'll be hunted every time I go to a new world? Some worlds have not yet developed self-awareness and will not react with hostility to the host, so basically, I'm a scumbag who bullies the weak and runs from the strong? The host may choose not to enhance skills. The system will cease constructing channels to plunder world origins." Hearing that icy, emotionless response, Kai's expression fell. "Forget it. Guess he'd just keep being a thief then." Chapter 33, Boy Meets Goddess. 3 days had passed since the chaos on the 18th floor. Adventurers who survived the safe floor were tirelessly recounting what happened, not just to boast of their feats, but to honor the comrades who had fallen in battle. As the person who killed the most Goliaths, Kai's name once again echoed throughout Orario. Nearly every tavern had bards putting on dramatic performances, singing about him in ballad-like tones. A lone figure from the Far East arrived in the Labyrinth City, joined the Hestia Familia with nothing to his name, rose to level 2 in just over 2 weeks, breaking the fastest record in history. He slew the Minotaur and the lone king of Labyrinth, Goliath, all by himself. He defeated Loki Familia's ferocious wolf Bet. His radiant sword shone like a star in the night sky. This tale of his meteoric rise became a living legend once polished by the bard's embellishments. In a city built on adventuring, life and death were everyday matters. People admired strength and worshipped heroes. And now, this living legend of a hero shared their very city. Every day, countless adventurers made pilgrimages to the Hestia Familia Chapel in the outer slums just to catch a glimpse of the famous Black Swordsman. Today was no exception. Early in the morning, over a dozen adventurers had gathered outside the spire-shaped church, bathed in sunlight, eyes gleaming with expectation, hoping to see a black-haired, black-eyed young man open the doors. But they would be disappointed today. On the 6th floor of Babel Tower, soft yellow lamps on both sides of the street cast a warm glow, illuminating the enclosed level. It was early, so other than store clerks waiting at the doors, the streets were deserted. That quiet was suddenly broken by a bell-like laugh. "Hey, Kai-kun. I know a place nearby with the best desserts. They're doing a discount promotion too. Let's check it out." His arm hooked by a certain busty lily goddess, Kai sighed as he looked into her bright blue eyes filled with excitement. There were only 10 days left until the trial mission the system had mentioned. He should have been hunting monsters every second to boost his stats and skill proficiency. Today he had stayed out of the dungeon just to buy new swords, but now that plan was derailed. Fine. Letting out a sigh, He gently patted Hestia's head, then took her hand and walked toward the dessert shop she had mentioned. Orario did have sweets, honey cakes, baked cookies, and the like. While not as varied as modern ones, they existed. Still, because most adventurers were men and those burly guys preferred booze, meat, and women, desserts had only a small niche market. One of those niches included the gods. Having shed their arcanum to descend to the lower world, the gods were here to enjoy mortal life. Delicate pleasures like sweets aligned perfectly with their refined tastes. As Kai and Hestia entered the shop, two catgirl attendants at the door bowed their heads. Their brown tails swayed elegantly before they greeted them in soft voices. "Welcome, esteemed Lady Hestia. Welcome, respected adventurer." Kai wasn't surprised they recognized him as an adventurer. In Orario, nearly all men were. Anyone who had fought monsters carried a certain sharpness that trained eyes could detect. What did surprise him was how familiar the girls were with Hestia. While she was once known as a poor goddess, she was still goddess. Many in Orario knew her face. But these girls spoke as if welcoming a regular customer. Glancing at the polite cat girls, Kai turned to Hestia. "You've been here before?" "Ah. Well, a friend brought me here a while ago." Hestia looked away shyly, her cheeks slightly flushed. "Lately, thanks to you, our familia's finances have improved a lot, so..." Her voice trailed into a whisper. "I'm not blaming you." Seeing her act like a child caught sneaking snacks, Kai shook his head and led her to a round table. Then he called over a waitress. Another beast girl approached, holding a wooden menu in both hands. Behind her swayed a pale yellow, spotted tail. A leopard girl. Watching her approach, Kai suddenly felt a powerful sense of déjà vu. Back when he had just graduated college and got his first paycheck, he had visited a beast girl-themed cafe just to fulfill a gentlemanly dream. He never imagined such a thing would exist in a fantasy world. Truly, a true gentleman is never alone no matter the world. "Hey, Kai-kun. That look in your eyes right now. It's no good." Hestia's voice snapped him out of his trance. Turning, he met her mildly annoyed stare. Kai shrank back guiltily. What do you mean? No good? You look like you're in heat." Stunned by her blunt words, Kai quickly looked away from the leopard girl. Flustered, he muttered, "I'm a healthy adult man, all right? Having these thoughts is perfectly normal. Then just look at me." Hands on her hips, Hestia stood up and glared. "You've got such a perfect woman right here with you. Why do you need to look at anyone else?" "Perfect, huh?" Kai's eyes briefly drifted toward her chest. "Well, in a certain way. Very perfect? All right. It's settled then." "Eh? What is?" "Since you're free today anyway, why not go on a date with me?" "Date? Yup, boy meets goddess." She struck a pose, one hand on her hip, the other giving a thumbs up, flashing a sly smile. "And by the way, this is an invitation from the goddess. Refusing might get you smited, Kai-kun. Hey, is it really okay to use your god status to force people into dates?" Speechless at her shameless proposal, Kai could only nod and silently shelve his plans to grind in the dungeon that afternoon. "Fine. I get it. Strictly speaking, a relationship between gods and mortals can't go anywhere." When Kai first arrived in Orario, he used to imagine pink, romantic scenes with Hestia. But over time, reality sank in. To gods, mortals were like toddlers emotionally and intellectually. That's why they always said your kid instead of referring to adventurers by name or title. Such a gap in life experience could never produce real love. It's like a shut-in falling for a 2D waifu, yeah, something like that. Once Kai understood that, he gave up on Hestia romantically, treating her solely as his goddess. This date he agreed to was more like taking a niece to the amusement park. And Kai was quite experienced at keeping kids entertained. Chapter 34, Come on, let's go on a date. Warm milk, a small cake soaked in honey, and a tray full of various cookies. Kai rested his chin in his hands, watching Hestia puffing her cheeks while eating and drinking. For a moment, it felt like he was back in the modern world. If this really were the modern world, having such a cute, big-breasted Lily as his companion might actually be a pretty delightful thing, right? Huh? Noticing Kai's fixed stare, Hestia's hand paused mid-bite. Then she reached out, picked up a cookie, and held it out to Kai's mouth with an affectionate look in her eyes. "Lady Hestia, I'm not a kid anymore." Seeing that she wanted to feed him, Kai instinctively shook his head and refused. But the cookie was shoved into his mouth just as he opened it to speak. Caught off guard by Hestia's sudden ambush, Kai froze. Before he could react, the rich, grainy aroma of the baked cookie was already spreading through his mouth. But along with it came another sensation. Something cool, soft, and sweet was touching his tongue. His pupils dilated slightly. Instinctively, his tongue flicked across the unfamiliar object. Then he understood what it was. It was Hestia's finger. Maybe she'd pushed a little too hard trying to make the cookie fit, and part of her finger ended up in his mouth too. Gulp. Kai swallowed the saliva in his mouth, now mixed with the cookie's flavor and another odd, sweet taste. Across the small round table, the god and the man stared at each other in silence, eyes wide. Kai was the first to recover. He leaned back, opened his mouth, and let Hestia's finger slip out. Then he forced a laugh and said, this cookie really is tasty. Ha. Ha ha ha. It wasn't until Kai heard Hestia's awkward laugh that the dazed look in her eyes returned to life. She pulled back her finger, feeling the slight dampness at her fingertip and the warmth from just now. A soft blush slowly rose on her pale cheeks. Then, as if to hide her embarrassment, she lowered her head and started eating cookies. Lady Hestia. Watching Hestia bury her face in the cookies, Kai had the sudden urge to remind her that her finger was still wet with his saliva. After enjoying the discounted desserts, Kai took Hestia out of the sweets shop and headed straight to the 13th floor of Babel Tower using the lift. Even though he promised to spend the day with Hestia, he hadn't forgotten his main objective: purchasing 2 new swords. On the obsidian storefront sign, silver characters engraved in elegant calligraphy read, Hephaestus Familia Specialty Store. It was the same weapon and armor shop Hestia had taken him to before. But this time, Kai didn't need Hestia to use her divine seal to buy weapons. His wealth was more than enough to cover the cost. Let's go, Lady Hestia. Holding Hestia's right hand, Kai wore the confident smile of a successful man, or a rich one, standing tall as he walked through the shop store. Last time he came here, it was to redeem Hestia's divine seal. He hadn't expected to return so soon. Welcome, Lord Kai. The moment Kai and Hestia stepped through the entrance, the bunny-eared reception girls on both sides blushed and bowed in greeting. Back when he came to buy back the divine seal, Kai's cool manner of dropping tens of millions of valis like it was nothing had left a deep impression on them. HMPH. Seeing the bunny girls flirtatiously glance at Kai, Hestia suddenly felt a strong wave of displeasure. Her previously good mood began to sour. Lady Hestia, is something wrong? You don't look too happy. I'm not unhappy. Turning her head away from Kai's gaze, Hestia couldn't quite explain what she was feeling, only that it was intensely uncomfortable. A scene unfolded in her mind. In a dimly lit corner, Kai was cuddled up with a cute bunny-eared girl, whispering sweet nothings, and then proceeding to do unspeakable, indecent things. And thinking about it carefully, with Kai's personality, something like that wasn't entirely impossible? Why am I even jealous like this? Shaking away the image in her mind, Hestia stared at Kai with a chilly, resentful gaze, her dissatisfaction steadily building. Meanwhile, the Kai in her imagination painted as a total scumbag was currently chatting with the mature store manager while inspecting sword hilts and choosing suitable weapons. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have acquired a one-handed sword, black, rating, 47 1/100ths, black-clad swordsman talent swordbone conditions not met, ding. Congratulations, host. You have acquired a one-handed sword, silver, rating, 22 1/100ths, black-clad swordsman talent swordbone conditions not met, ding. Congratulations, host. You have acquired a one-handed sword, blue, rating, 50 1/100ths, black-clad swordsman talent swordbone conditions not met, ding. Congratulations, host. You have acquired a one-handed sword, red, rating, 39 1/100ths, black-clad swordsman talent swordbone conditions not met. Even after examining every sword hilt on the rack, Kai couldn't find one that surpassed his old 53-point black sword, so he was still unable to reawaken swordbone. Noticing his faintly disappointed sigh, the mature store manager smiled and asked, "What's wrong? Didn't find one to your liking?" "It's okay." Shaking his head, Kai walked back to the rack and drew 2 swords, one black and one blue. The black sword was rated 47, and the blue 150. These were the finest crafted swords in the entire rack. Given the previous black sword's durability, the quality of these 2 wasn't low. With the swordbone enhancement, they were just barely passable. These 2 will do. He placed the swords on the counter, pulled out a magic stone card, and swiped it through the card slot. Beep. With the crisp beep, the manager's smile deepened. She sheathed the swords and handed them back to Kai. "Thank you for your purchase. That'll be 16.47 million valis. We hope to see you again." Receiving the swords, Kai fastened the scabbards to his belt. "So, Lady Hestia, do I look cool?" Placing both hands on the sword hilts, Kai struck a flashy pose like Captain Levi and looked at Hestia. "Yeah. You look really cool, Kai." Hestia nodded and smiled warmly at Kai's excited expression. Though she didn't want to admit it, Hestia had to say Kai felt like a completely different person when wielding swords. Once his hands touched the hilts, his sharp aura drew everyone's attention. Dual wielding really is every man's romance. Hearing Hestia's genuine praise, Kai let go of the hilts, his aura fading. After buying the swords, Kai spent the rest of the day with Hestia in Babel Tower and Aurario. As dusk fell, they returned to the church. Right. Lady Hestia, I have something I want to give you. Closing the church doors, Kai turned with a mysterious smile and reached into his black coat. Eh? Seeing Kai's mysterious expression, Hestia blinked. Then, from his coat, Kai pulled out a long, pale green gift box, delicately wrapped. A fancy blue ribbon tied into a bow added an elegant touch. This is for me? Hestia's eyes widened as she stared at the box in front of her. Of course. It's your first date, isn't it, Lady Hestia? Smiling brightly, Kai said, and no date is complete without a gift from the guy. Staring at his smile, Hestia slowly took the box, holding it like it was a priceless treasure. Watching her hesitate to open it, Kai gently nudged her. Lady Hestia, open it. I picked it out just for you. Urged on, Hestia untied the ribbon. The lid opened, revealing a pair of hair ornaments shaped like azure petals, with a tiny silver bell in the center. Well, Lady Hestia? I have good taste, right? Seeing Hestia's deeply moved expression as she stared at the ornaments, Kai grinned. Thank you, she said, her eyes glistening. Thank you, Kai. I love it. As long as you like it. Nodding, Kai took out a wooden comb from his coat and walked behind her, guiding her to sit on the church pew. Kai? Letting herself be seated, Hestia looked up at his faint smile, wondering what he was up to. Sit still, Lady Hestia. He gently patted her head, lowered it, and undid the worn-out ribbon tying her hair. Then, he started brushing her hair. Feeling the comb glide through her hair, Hestia's face turned as red as the setting sun. She suddenly understood why she'd been jealous earlier. As a goddess, Hestia had developed strong feelings for the first member of her familia Kai. Originally, she had come to the lower world to help its children grow and live colorful lives. But Kai had become her support and strength, bringing her familia prosperity. Before she knew it, she was relying on him for everything. It had only been a month or so, but she was used to having someone plan ahead for her, someone always dependable in any situation. Hestia really loved that calm, reliable version of Kai. Because of that, she had developed an intense sense of possessiveness. She wanted to be with him always, to be the only one in his eyes. Hey, Kai. She said while twiddling her fingers as he brushed her hair, do you have any plans for the future? Plans? I guess just traveling to the places I've always wanted to visit, meeting the people from those stories. No. Hearing Kai talk about leaving, Hestia trembled and instantly shouted, Kai, promise me never leave me. Our familia, okay? Kai didn't answer immediately. He simply finished tying her twin tails with the new hair accessories. There. All done. Kai, you still haven't answered me. Seeing his flustered expression, Hestia pressed again. Kai smiled and nodded. Okay. On the pale blue system screen only he could see, the red countdown ticked down. Chapter 35, the approaching deadline. In the 42nd floor of the dungeon, the stone walls all around pulsed with a dim, purplish glow that seemed to writhe like living things. A dark figure raced at full speed through the passage, and behind that shadow surged a wave of countless monsters. Crack, crack, crack. As the figure ran, small fragments of stone kept falling from the cave walls around him. With each falling shard, a cavity opened in the stone, its interior glowing a deep red, and freshly spawned monsters dropped out from within. TCH, what a nuisance. Without slowing down, the dark figure Kai locked eyes on the newly born monsters blocking his path. Holding twin longswords in an X-shaped cross, sparks of light flickered along the blades. Sword intent surged violently around him, and blood-red aura swirled like a storm. The moment the light gathering on his blades reached its peak, zing! A sharp, ringing sword cry echoed out. In that instant, two beams of intense silver-white light burst forth, illuminating the entire 42nd floor corridor. Moments later, the light faded. In the dim dungeon tunnel, from Kai's position extending dozens of meters forward, every newly spawned monster had silently fallen, lifeless corpses now strewn across the ground. His cold eyes stared at the corpses of those monsters, which looked completely unharmed on the surface. As if what he'd done just now was nothing worth mentioning, Kai's expression didn't change in the slightest. With both hands gripping his sword hilts tightly, his figure turned into a black blur, leaving a blood-reeking gust of wind behind as he charged straight toward the vertical stairway at the end of the tunnel. Just a few meters behind him, all sorts of level 4 and level 5 monsters pushed and shoved, swarming together into a wild tide, launching wave after wave of relentless pursuit. Thud. Just as he dashed into the vertical stairway, Kai stumbled and fell to the ground. At the same time, his hands holding the swords trembled like a leaf. His chest rose violently with each labored breath, and his lungs burned with a sharp, bloody pain. 10 hours. Or 20? He couldn't remember anymore. All he recalled was that before entering the dungeon, the bright full moon was hanging high above Babel Tower. System. Leaning on his long swords to push himself off the ground, Kai called out the system screen once he caught his breath a little. Name, K. Race, human. Profession, adventurer level 2, 6739 10,000ths, Hestia familia, age, 23, 150, height, 178 centimeter, weight, 71 kilogram, spirit, 55, 100, strength, 53, 100, agility, 69, 100, endurance, 61, 100, constitution, 70, 100, class inheritance, black swordsman, energy, 887,452.31, in just a few days, by constantly defeating high-level monsters above his rank, Kai had earned vast amounts of experience far beyond what low-level mobs could provide. He had pushed his level 2 adventurer EXP bar past halfway, and all his stats had risen accordingly. Currently, his highest stat constitution had already broken 70.